Claude Monet's 1865 painting, entitled Le Point de la Hève at low tide, depicts an expansive beach along the Normandy coast. It was along this coastline where Monet had grown up and where he learned to paint. This early work evidences Monet's development of a method of painting landscape that unifies the observation of nature and the compositional structure. Monet is best known for his impressionist works, such as Poppyfield's Argenteuil. This painting seems, at least initially, to be spontaneously painted, capturing the artist's immediate sensations of nature. Although Monet often put finishing touches on his paintings in the studio, he promoted the idea that he painted entirely in the open air. Painting outdoors, or en plein air, was important to Monet because he believed that this was the most truthful method of landscape painting. However, equally important was Monet's process of translating the observation of nature into the visual language of painting. A successful painting needs to have a compositional structure. A painting's compositional structure organizes the picture around a focal point. The composition should have an equilibrium of stability, movement, unity, and contrast. However, as we observe nature from moment to moment, it is not composed. The problem for the plein air landscape painter is how to make a depiction of nature that has a successful composition, but also convinces the viewer of its naturalism. Monet's commitment to painting nature as he observed it meant that he had to develop strategies of finding elements in nature that translated into the composition of a successful painting. The artist's freedom that we see in Poppyfields and in other works from the 1870s was founded on a method that Monet carefully developed in the 1860s. One of Monet's most impressive landscapes from this early period of his art is Le Point de la Hève at low tide. Monet exhibited this work, which he painted in the studio, in the Salon of 1865. Low tide is one of the first paintings that Monet submitted to the Paris Salon. In the 1870s, Monet would reject the Salon system. However, at the start of his artistic career, in the 1860s, Monet still regarded the Salon as a place where artists established their artistic identity. Therefore, we can look at Low Tide as Monet's introduction of himself. Born in Paris in 1840, Monet had been raised on the Normandy coast. It was there that he first learned to paint. His first artistic mentor was Eugène Boudin. Boudin is best known for his paintings of beachgoers. It was Boudin who recognized Monet's talent and encouraged him to become a painter. Boudin's painting, The Beach at Villerville, depicts a group of fashionable vacationers. The figures are carefully arranged and rendered with great attention to detail in their faces and clothing. The majority of the painting, depicting the sky, is much more freely painted. The dynamic sense of life that we see in the sky, compared to the more static arrangement of the figures, confirms Boudin's statement: 3 brushstrokes in nature are worth more than 2 days' work in the studio. Boudin's painting highlights a challenge of plein air painting, namely, how to unify a perception of nature and the structure of a painting. Solving this paradox was one of Monet's principal artistic objectives in the 1860s. This project would ultimately lead to the development of Impressionism. Although Monet was initially dismissive of Boudin's practice of painting outdoors, Monet later confessed, "My eyes were finally opened, and I really understood nature. I learned at the same time to love it." Painting en plein air on the Normandy coast, Monet produced works such as Seascape, This work seems to be an impromptu view of the open sea. However, Monet was able to use the movement of the waves and distant ships to establish a foreground and background space. Nevertheless, this sort of sketch would have been unacceptable at the official Paris Salon. Although his final painting, Le Point de Hève at low tide, measures almost 3 feet by 5 feet, Monet began with smaller canvases that could be worked in the outdoors. Le Point de Hève, which is about half the size of low tide, depicts an empty beach and small rowboat. However, this smaller study establishes the basic compositional organization of the scene, with the water at the left, the beach at the right, and the landscape rising in the background. Monet's painting Horses at Point de la Hève is about half the size of low tide. This study is somewhat closer to the final Salon painting. Here, the tide has gone out, exposing more of the beach. However, the point of view is slightly different. The comparison of the study and the final work demonstrates how the point of view from which Monet painted determined the painting's composition. In the studio painting, Monet has combined elements from both of these studies. What Monet has added in the final work, which is absent from the studies, is how the figures, horses, and cart have left tracks in the wet beach. As a work that he intended to exhibit at the official Paris Salon, Monet carefully constructed this work's arrangement of pictorial space. In developing his compositional structure, Monet divided this painting into 4 pictorial areas. From left to right, these are the sea, the area exposed by the low tide, the more manicured beach, and the rising cliffs. Monet treated each of these 4 areas of the pictorial scene as distinct zones within the painting. These 4 sections are akin to wedges of a pie, each pointed towards and held together by a single vanishing point. The compositional structure highlights the somewhat artificial construction of the scene. In low tide, Monet has mapped out the landscape using perspective and a vanishing point. The line describing the edge of the water and the line that marks the high tide begin respectively at the lower left and lower right corners. These meet at a vanishing point on the horizon. As the hillside descends to the water, it also points to the same vanishing point. Furthermore, within the space between the waterline and the high tide, the tracks on the wet beach also move towards the same vanishing point. The entire painting is visually unified by the sky, which cuts across the whole painting's top half. Low tide, as a painting, can be divided into 2 horizontal bands. The lower band, of the sea and the beach, sufficiently conform to the laws of perspective to satisfy the judges of the Salon. The upper band of the sky is painted with greater naturalism. Claude Monet's Le Point de la Hève at low tide has a compositional structure that gives this scene a sense of monumentality that would be expected of a work for the Salon. At the same time, this work evidences a method of naturalism attuned to the changeable temporality of its subject. Monet's painting suggests that there is a storm on the horizon. That storm's name would be Impressionism, and the academic art of the Salon would be washed away in the tide of art history.